Well, hi again, everyone. I'm Patrick Fingston. I write the Illinoize political newsletter, which you can find at theillinoize.com. My desk and office are a complete wreck, but don't judge me for that. We are trying something a little different today. We are happy to welcome our friend Ray Long from the Chicago Tribune, the great political reporter, and who's almost kind of become a de facto criminal reporter at this point with all of the corruption trials he's been covering over the last few years, and all of the corruption in Springfield and Chicago. And Ray literally wrote the book on Mike Madigan called the House that Madigan Built. So that's on Amazon and at your favorite bookstores, I'm sure. So go pick that up because it's a great read. Ray, I appreciate you being here, and we hope folks can pop questions into the comments here, and you can also drop us an email, mailbag at theillinoize.com. I'll pop that up here once I get to my correct banner. Just have people can listen to me do an interview anytime, and I'm a dope and drone on, and we wanted to have a good conversation with you since you're a guy in the know and who's been so at the center of this. So thanks for taking time, my friend.
Always good to be here, Patrick. I appreciate your invitation.
So let's, before we get into the hot and heavy Madigan stuff specifically, especially since that's in the news after the court hearing yesterday, you're a small town kid like me,
Right.
Who somehow wound up covering and being around and involved with politicians, a kid from Winchester, Illinois, and a kid from Crescent City, Illinois, talking about some of the most powerful politicians in our state. How on earth did your track get you here?
Well, I think it's just a natural instinct where I found the whole political scene in Illinois to be fascinating. I also found it to be something that people should know more about, and it's in Springfield, where I was for a couple of decades, or more than a couple of decades actually. I always felt that was the greatest beat on planet Earth. I mean, you saw all kinds of great issues coming through Springfield. I got hooked on that when I was an intern back in 1981, the first year that Mike Madigan was a legislative leader. He was actually Minority Leader Madigan then. That was the first of two times he was Minority Leader. And George Ryan was the Speaker. And so I found the whole dynamics to be incredible and interesting, and I got hooked on it. And I just kept following it. And the real political power is in Chicago, in Illinois. And I think that as a kid from downstate, you want to follow how the power shakes out. I mean, when I was a real little kid, Patrick, back when I was growing up, we didn't have seat belts or things like that. I'd climb up over the back, stand on the hump in the back seat, crane my neck around and try to be the first person in the car to spot the Capitol on our big trip to Springfield. And when I got there years and decades later, I tried to be the first person to spot the story in the Capitol.
See, that's why the guy can. That's why the guy can spin it. Let's start, if you don't mind, with the pending Madigan corruption trial, which just got delayed. Had an email come in, which I think pretty much handles the base question. Why push the trial? Does the Indiana case really matter that much?
Well, I was in the courtroom yesterday, and I watched it all go down. And the prosecution said we don't really need to delay it. We can adjust the jury instructions if there's a decision that comes down in the whole matter. The Indiana case is one where a guy from Portage, Indiana, was a local official, and he was involved in a contract for a local company, and the company eventually gave him several $1,000s. The issue there is that a gratuity? Was there a quid pro quo, was it allowed, and did that actually cross any of the lines? Now, why that's a curious question at this point is because other circuits in the U.S., federal circuits, have ruled differently. So they have said at different places that there is more leeway, basically, in how public officials can accept gratuities or gifts or things like that. And that the Federal U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, the Seventh Circuit here in Chicago, actually has said that it's more strict interpreting how they allow, whether or not they would allow these things. So they're basically, their rulings have been basically tougher on public officials. The Indiana case is in the Seventh Circuit. That has been appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. They say they'll rule probably around June or July, and that is a reason to push it back. That is the argument that was made, and the one that the judge accepted for the idea that, hey, let's get the rules, the ground rules down so the defense can prepare a proper argument in its case and strategy, etc., and so that we don't have to do this trial twice. If they went through the trial on one set of ground rules and the Supreme Court comes out with a ruling that could change things, then they would have to, set up a new jury. The first jury, the judge said, the first jury goes to all this effort, it goes through several weeks of trial, and then their efforts are thrown out. So let's just go with one jury. Let's get the ruling. Let's find out what the rules are, see if it's changed. It may match with the way it is right now. And if it is, great, we just proceed. If it doesn't, if it changes, then we just push the whole trial back a few months. So instead of being April 1, they've decided to make it October 8th. And everybody will know what the game plan is. The judge said in his analogy, he gave several analogies. Some of them involved Legos and stepping on Legos in the middle of the night. But the one that made probably more sense was that it's like you think you're playing a game of football, and then halfway through the game, you change your rules to say, oh, we're playing baseball now. So he didn't want to have to deal with all that, and thought it would be fairer for Mike Madigan, Mike McLean, the two defendants, and he thought that it would be more efficient too.
Maybe this is too in the weeds, and if it is, I apologize. But
No sweat.
The idea of gratuities and gifts and what I'm not a lobbyist, but I've been in a different part of my life. The contribution limits, those sort of things, what can be given to a politician are all pretty outlined, whether it's in Illinois state law, Indiana state law, whatever state it might be. This isn't gratuity. This is bribery. So where does the Fed get into the mix here? Because it seems like we're talking about apples and oranges.
Well, I don't want to get too technical, and I also don't want to misspeak here, but we kind of grounded down in our story today, and we noted that the case is important because it resolves this split among the different circuits that I was talking about, and it comes down to the issue of whether or not you can describe what a reward or a gratuity is given to a public official and what constitutes a bribe, even in the absence of a quid pro quo. So in other words, it's going to be hard. It would be hard for me to believe that Madigan is on tape, for example, saying, "Hey, let's go do a quid pro quo," or if you do this, I'll do this, or something like that. Their evidence, we still have to see all of it, but the question is whether some kind of trade that could be favorable to you, or some kind of effort, like in this case, for example, ComEd has already acknowledged that they showered him with a variety of things that he wanted, such as or allegedly wanted, such as putting his people, some of his cronies, on a payroll into no-work jobs, and to a lesser extent, but still in the indictment, putting a bunch of college interns from his ward into ComEd summer jobs, sending legal business to one of his political cronies, and actually appointing to this state-regulated board a guy that he wanted appointed. And so the prosecution's theory is that at a certain point, these become bribes, that you could interpret these as bribes, alleged bribes anyway, and that Madigan, that they were trying to do this in return for Madigan looking favorably, or helping or putting his thumb on the scale to give ComEd wins in their legislative agenda.
That ties me into a question we got by email, which I think is pertinent. Worried that the feds don't have a smoking gun against Madigan. Do you think there's enough evidence to convict? And I do think that as you've, and we haven't heard all the tapes. We heard the
Right.
tapes from the Mike McLean side of the trial, the ComEd 4 trial.
Right.
But there was never Mike Madigan on tape saying, "We want this. We want them to do this for this," the quid pro quo that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've all been around. I mean, at least you and I have been around lobbyists for plenty of years who are hyper focused on keeping politicians happy.
Right.
And go out of their way to keep them happy.
Yeah.
Is there, in your mind, or maybe if you don't want to get into that opinion part of it, why do prosecutors believe they have enough evidence to convict?
Well, I think that they look at this as kind of a cumulative thing, and that's why they have so many different varieties of issues here. They also have, in the superseding indictment that came out after the original indictment in March of 2022, they came in with a superseding indictment that included similar activities of putting somebody on a payroll in a no-work job, a former legislator, a member of Madigan's Democratic leadership team, Eddie Acevedo, into a no-work job at AT&T, allegedly to also curry favor with Madigan. Now, the question is, are they just trying to curry favor? Is that a no big deal? Or is that a remarkable give that crosses the line? So I would gather that the prosecutors think that these companies were giving up things to Madigan to shower him with gifts, gratuities, or to some extent crossing the line or dancing on the allegations of whether it's a bribery or not. And so when they add all these together, they push it into a conspiracy or racketeering charges.
When you wrote your book, obviously you didn't have the benefit of wiretap conversations or what Mike McLean said on tape or in court or that sort of thing, and the people who have worked with Madigan over the years, and I wrote a big story about him after, with people after he was deposed back in 2021, that, generally the people who have worked with Madigan have the kindest things to say about him. that he is, that he is a good man and a family man and cares and works well with people and is trying to do the right thing. And yeah, he's political, but everybody in politics is political. Um, how would he have been able to? And I'm sure those same people told the same things to you when you wrote your book. How would he have been able to put on a facade for all of these people he's worked with in the legislature for 40 years, but in the background be churning this criminal enterprise?
Well, first of all, they're all allegations, right? So we don't know that, and I certainly don't have clairvoyance here or the ability to cut behind the walls that he put up. But I did talk to a lot of people, and I looked at depositions over the years, and I've seen these indictments. Now, he has pleaded guilty, or I mean, God, he has pleaded innocent. He has pleaded not guilty. And
boy, would that have made our lives different.
Yeah, right. I apologize for that. He has emphatically denied any wrongdoing, but what I never had, of course, was the ability to have hidden video or wiretapping or anything like that. So you know what he says publicly, you know what people around him say, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And so the question is whether there's something that the feds have been able to pull out that they think crosses the line, and that's where they believe they have enough to charge him, and they believe they can back it up.
Here's another email we got related to kind of a similar case, and that's of Madigan's former chief of staff, Tim Mapes. Why did the feds go so hard on Tim Mapes? They pushed really hard on lying to the FBI charges. There was also obstruction, if I remember right. Were they trying to scare him to flip against Madigan, and he stood firm? How did Mapes go down the way that it did?
Well, I don't know the total strategy, but I can speculate on it, and it looks like that they did indeed try to get him. They tried to squeeze him. This is what his attorneys said. They were trying to squeeze Mapes to flip on Madigan, but they argued that he had nothing to give, and the jury didn't buy it. Obviously, the jury had like 7 different things that they could check a box for, or a dozen different things that they could check a box for on perjury and obstruction, attempted obstruction counts, and they checked all the boxes. I mean, so they believed that Mapes wasn't truthful. He certainly gave vague answers. We heard the entire grand jury recording in the courtroom, and the prosecutors would play a part of what he said in the grand jury, and it would be a vague answer, and then you would hear what he was saying when he was talking to Mike McLean on the telephone, because McLean's phone was tapped, and the two didn't really match up, and that was the jury's belief, and that's one reason he came out guilty. I think that they probably came so hard on him, as the question asks, because it was not just like one simple little remark he made. They pointed to, the prosecutors alleged multiple times, that he was not forthcoming, and multiple times that they thought that he was outright lying. And so the jury agreed with the prosecution's case, and I think they also probably wanted to send a message that you can't just go into the jury and try to wing it and try to think that you can outsmart the grand jury or the prosecutors. And I think they wanted to send that message, and by doing that with the chief of staff for Mike Madigan, you sent a pretty strong message.
That's also, I think, part of it is Tim Mapes is a really smart guy, and Tim Mapes knows he's a really smart guy, and isn't necessarily afraid to show it. I mean, it almost seems like he was had when he was trying to outsmart these guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those deals where you hear a lot of people say over the years that Tim thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and then you wonder if he tried to play that card with the grand jury. I don't know that that was the case, but if that were the case, it didn't work out well.
We also saw, Ray, that the sentencing for the ComEd 4, as I'm sure our friends at the utility love having their name thrown into a criminal enterprise. The sentencing is going to be pushed back. I know that ties into the Indiana case as well, so that they can get some more direction on that. And I know there was a hearing and some briefs are going to be filed. Is there any possibility that the feds are working to get testimony? I mean, they're not going to get McLean. He's Madigan's co-defendant in this case, but to try and get any of the Parmajor, John Hooker, etc., to try and testify against Madigan for anything?
Well, I think that's always a possibility. The problem with somebody like Mapes is you could bring him on the stand even if he had something to flip on, and he did flip. Then the issue is you've got a convicted liar going up on the stand, so that diminishes somewhat what he can bring to a case. But you could see them trying to squeeze him. You could see them trying to squeeze any number of other people to try to bring more to their Madigan case. But it would probably be a surprise at this stage in the game to see anybody else who's already been convicted step up and add to the Madigan case.
The wiretaps are going to be great theater, aren't they?
Well, I tell you what, you really are typing like a maniac when you're in the courtroom trying to catch all those wiretaps, and then listening to them and hearing the private conversations and hearing, hearing their inner thoughts versus hearing their public thoughts are really, kind of eye-opening for the general public.
Well, and thankfully, we're more technologically advanced than we were for like the George Ryan campaign or trial. That these wiretaps, especially during the ComEd trial, they were releasing the full audio to the media, so we could just drop them on YouTube and everyone could hear them. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really helpful, I think, for the public to see the evidence and hear the evidence, and so you can write a story and you can link to the audio, and I think that's an advance in helping people understand what's going on and what the jury is basing their decision on, etc. I also think that over the years, just from being a reporter for over 4 decades now, I have seen advances in the technology that the prosecution can bring and the defense can bring to the cases too. I mean, the ability to capture all of these wiretaps and video recordings, and the ability to play them on a big screen in the courtroom and to play them back. I mean, in the old days, like in a case like the Management Services Inc. Illinois case involving pay for play allegations back under the Edgar administration, not Edgar himself, but allegations that arose from a contract deal with public aid. They had to argue those in Springfield with like telling people numbers and just bombarding the jury with numbers and having no charts or PowerPoints or anything nowadays, man, you can not only make these things, make their evidence amplified with PowerPoints, but they can also make their arguments. They can go through their arguments bullet point by bullet point and point them out on a PowerPoint and make the jury completely educated in ways that, you know, they just had to kind of keep it all in their head and take down good notes. And I think all of the technology has really advanced both the prosecution and the evidence gathering, and you know, it's gone to a much more sophisticated level.
I won't spend a ton of time on the Ed Burke trial, but I think this kind of adds Burke to Madigan. This email question we had: why are these old guys finally getting prosecuted after they're not influential anymore? They could have stopped some of the problems that caused us all years ago. It's also, I mean, it's true though that, I mean, some of these Madigan allegations are 2015, 2016, 2017. I mean, years and years ago now.
2011,
yeah, 2011. It goes far back. You know, what took so long to prosecute these cases in Madigan or Burke?
I think part of the thing I just got in saying about how much more sophisticated prosecutions or prosecutors' tools and FBI tools are. I think also that to say that they're prosecuting these guys once they're out of power is not quite on target. I appreciate the question. The issue, I think, is that they brought these charges and investigated them when they were at the height of their power in some cases, and the investigations knocked them out of the box. Madigan was still Speaker of the House when he was identified as Public Official A in 2020 in the ComEd deferred prosecution agreement. And that's the one where ComEd started admitting that they showered Madigan with gifts or jobs for associates, etc., allegedly to influence his decisions on legislative matters to bring him around to their side. Now, Madigan's people will stand there and say they fought ComEd tooth and nail, and in many ways they did. But the prosecution still believes that that Madigan was shown an inordinate amount of favoritism through these types of grants. Now, the idea that they're still going after them, well, they're going after him. Mike Madigan might still be the Speaker of the House today if they hadn't.
If he weren't Public Official A, really.
Yeah,
I mean, that's when the wheels started to move.
Right. I mean, it was a combination of things. He was weakened after the 2018 sexual harassment scandals of his aides, and I think that helped move some of the women legislators to look at that, plus the Public Official A designation. And by the time he was running for a re-election as Speaker in 2021, Mike McLean and Ann Pramaggiore, the CEO of ComEd, and a couple of lobbyists had been indicted too. So there was this kind of growing groundswell. Don't forget also that Republicans were pounding away on Madigan in a variety of things. Ken Griffin, for one, the billionaire who opposed billionaire J.B. Pritzker's proposal to tax the people with the biggest paychecks at a higher rate. Ken Griffin pounded away and used Madigan as an albatross to defeat that proposal. And also Madigan backed Thomas Kilbride, the Supreme Court Justice, who he'd backed in two previous elections. successfully, and Kilbride was going for a third 10-year term, but he couldn't get the 60% necessary for retention on the court. And the district that he ran in, Republicans just pounded away on his connection to Madigan. So at the height of his power, Madigan was getting attacked on all sides, and the Democratic officials, a lot of lead Democratic officials, thought that he should either step down as speaker or step down as party chairman, or both.
I think you also saw toward the end of Madigan's reign as speaker, the kind of Democrat changed too. The kind of Democrat that was in the House, from your institutionalists to your do-gooder progressives. The fewer Lou Langs and more Will Guzzardis. You know what I mean? And that that changed the feeling inside the caucus too, I'm sure. So
there were definitely attitudes, and a lot of the lawmakers were tired of being attached to Madigan.
Mushrooms.
They'd go out. They'd tell me that they go out door to door, pitching themselves to constituents, and the constituents would. One of the first questions they'd ask is, why don't you get rid of Madigan as the speaker? So that was kind of part of the issue too, that there was a general view that Madigan was political baggage.
Two more for you, Ray, if you have a minute. They're less Madigan and more kind of, one's more Supreme Court, one's more political. This one from email: does the gun ban and registry hold up with the U.S. Supreme Court? I've said no. I don't think it does. Eventually, have you dug into that very much?
Well, I've looked at the issue. I haven't been the point guy on that issue. I think that you're taking a guess when you guess what the Supreme Court is going to come down on. Based on their track record, it seems like there's a lot of momentum to put that law in jeopardy, but they can find a sliver here and there and find a way to uphold it if they want to too. It's a jump ball when you get to that high in the equation and all the different factors that come involved. I wish I could be more definitive, but I really can't.
Yeah, I would encourage people to go read the New York case, and we can tweet the link to it at some point, because that's going to probably be the basis for this. And then just the last one we got on Twitter. You've done a lot of politics over the years. Do you think what is left of the Illinois conservative movement is going to wake up and smell the coffee and start ignoring grifters like Bailey, or continue down the current path? I would say as long as Donald Trump is Donald Trump and Donald Trump still has control of the Republican Party, the grift is in.
Well, I think there's a lot of people who truly are admirers of Donald Trump out there, and they're stuck on him, and they think that, despite all these indictments, etc., they still think that these are political attacks against him versus actual alleged crimes that he committed. So there is a groundswell of support for Trump that is going to be difficult to turn back. I don't think that you're going to be finding people splitting away in droves from him or from the folks that are trying to ride his coattails. And Bailey's one that's obviously trying to connect himself to Trump and ride his coattails and tie himself to Trump and hope that can carry him over the finish line.
All we know here on January 4th is it's going to be a weird year. Ray, thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. You know, of course, many folks do, that my wife is a former State House reporter in Springfield, and
very good one too.
She loves Ray Long and is a and is always a good fan when I get to talk to him. So,
Katie Hines was a terrific reporter, and we miss having her on the beat down there. That's for sure.
She was better at it than I am. That's for sure.
Well, I'm not going to start any family argument. Don't make me weigh in on that one. That's the hottest question you've got going there for me.
Ray, thanks so much, my friend. I really appreciate it. And follow Ray on Twitter at Ray Long, and keep reading his stuff in the Chicago Tribune. He's one of the best in the business. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Patrick. Good to be here.
All right. Thanks so much to Ray Long for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this live stream that we're, we'll put it out as a podcast too and everything, but wanted to have a little interactive conversation with Ray. So thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.